So a few weeks ago, Black Desert Online was released on Steam and met with a flood of new players entering the game. As of making this video, over 280,000 people bought the game on Steam alone, according to Steam Spy. As someone that still plays the game every day and streams it regularly, I've had a lot of questions from people asking whether or not it's too late to start playing, and if it's possible to catch up with everyone else. So that's what we're going to discuss in this video, as well as go over a few other frequently asked questions that new players tend to have. First, let's talk about catching up. This isn't something you should be concerned with as a PvE player or life skiller, as there's no raiding or dungeons in BDO, so you haven't really got any reason to need to catch up with everyone else super quickly. This is more of a question that players interested in BDO's PvP endgame tend to ask, and the answer is yes. It's absolutely possible to catch up and even surpass the average gear score and level of people who have played the game a lot longer than you. What most people want to know though is, how long does it take to be competitive? And the answer to that really depends on the type of guild you join and what type of fights that guild goes for. BDO's PvP endgame consists of node wars and sieges, each of which has its own general level of gear score and character level to be competitive in. You've got tier 1 node wars, tier 2 node wars, and tier 3 node wars, Serendia and Balanos sieges, and finally castle sieges. As a new player, it's possible to get into and participate in tier 1 node wars and be a useful member of your guild within about a month of playing the game. I recommend you aim for level 58 with a combined gear score of 420 APDP combined. Tier 1 node wars are basically this game's entry level PvP content, and typically attract a lot of low geared guilds due to the reward for being a tier 1 being much less than a tier 2 or tier 3 node. Regardless of the reward though, tier 1 node wars are extremely fun due to the amount of guilds that usually show up to fight, and to this day some of my favourite memories of BDO are when I just rejoined the game and got to fight in my first few tier 1s. When it comes to joining a tier 2 node war guild, I'd say the average requirements are about 450 combined gear score and level 59. This was roughly what I got to in about a month after I started playing the game again. It's possible to get to if you play a lot, but playing casually it'll probably take a little bit longer. Tier 3 node war guilds typically ask for level 59 to 60 and a minimum of 470 gear score combined. This will probably take the average player about 3 months to achieve. However, due to there being less guilds competing for tier 3 nodes, the PvP isn't as fun as tier 2s or tier 1s, despite the rewards for winning being much higher. Serendia and Balanos sieges happen every Saturday and last up to 4 hours. The guilds that fight for these zones are typically the same ones that fight for tier 2 and tier 3 nodes. In my experience, fighting for Serendia and Balanos is the most fun PvP in Black Desert. There's a lot of guilds that show up to fight, it's more balanced than castle sieges, and the terrain isn't too bad to fight on. As a PvP player, I'd recommend you set your endgame goal to be fighting in a guild and winning one of these territories. Castle sieges in Black Desert are where the most hardcore and top geared players in the game fight. They happen every Saturday and can last up to 4 hours. Winning a castle and holding it for multiple weeks will net your guild billions of silver. I'd say the average requirements to be in a successful castle siege guild are level 60 plus and 500 gear score combined, which will take the average player several months to get to. In my experience, being in a castle siege guild isn't really too fun if you're looking for great PvP, as the fights you do get are few and far between. If you want to be in one of the best guilds in the server though, this will be your goal. So hopefully after explaining all that, you now realise that each tier of PvP in BDO has its own requirements for being competitive, and to have fun in PvP you don't need to give up your life and abandon your family. It all depends on the guild you decide to join and what their goals are, which is why it's important that you find the right guild for you in this game. I'm someone that's experienced every level of PvP in BDO. When I returned to the game in January, I joined a guild called Leviathan where we started doing tier 1 wars. Then we progressed as a guild and moved up to tier 2s. I then decided to leave and join a guild called Addicted to experience castle sieges. I decided it wasn't for me, so I left and rejoined Leviathan where we do tier 3 node wars and Serendia and Balanos sieges, which I find the most fun. But in total it took me about 2 to 3 weeks of playing before I got my first taste of Black Desert PvP, which has had me hooked ever since. A common misconception with Black Desert is that you'll never reach that point where you can stop grinding and just chill. This is untrue, and if you're someone that hates grinding like me, once you reach about level 60, you don't really have to grind mobs to keep up with the gear curve anymore. Instead, you can simply do AFK life skills. I, for example, only actively play the game either when I'm streaming or doing PvP with the guild. I hardly ever grind, yet I'm still making around 400 million silver per week from AFK processing and trading. Once you reach a certain point in BDO, it's very easy to keep up. One of the most common questions I get asked about Black Desert would be, is the game pay to win? And the answer to that question is yes and no. The most pay to win item on the Black Desert cash shop is something called Artisan's Memory, which you'll use to recover durability on boss gear when you fail to enhance a piece. Each Artisan's Memory you use will save you 1.5 million silver and costs about 40 euros for 100 of them, in total saving you 150 million silver as well as a bunch of time when upgrading boss gear. The reason I say yes and no in regards to the pay to win is you don't have to use this item to upgrade boss gear, and you can bypass the upgrading system entirely by pre-ordering or winning already upgraded pieces of boss gear on the marketplace. However, that requires a bit of luck or quite a high pre-order. I suppose the next question you'd ask would be, do I need boss gear to be competitive? And in my opinion, if you're in a tier 1 or tier 2 nodal guild, the answer is no, but for tier 3 and Castle Siege guilds, I'd say yes. Another controversial cash shop feature that people claim is pay to win is the ability to buy outfits for real money and sell them for in-game silver on the marketplace. In my opinion, I wouldn't consider this to be too much of an issue, purely due to how cheap these outfits sell for. Just to put this into perspective, you could spend 34 euros on a costume and sell it for 25 million in-game silver, which in BDO really isn't that much at all. It's the same money as you'd make from grinding pirates for 2 hours. You're also limited to only selling 5 outfits on the marketplace per week, meaning the most you could get on a weekly basis for trying to pay to win is 175 million silver at the cost of 170 euros each week, which is so little that nobody really bothers. Other than that, everything else on the cash shop falls more into the convenience category more than anything else. You can buy 4 pets to loot for you, which makes grinding more efficient. You can buy additional weight limits so you can grind for longer without banking or selling items. You can buy inventory space, as well as a few other things that aren't super important. As a new player, if you do want to get into this game, I'd say the priority things to invest in would be pets, weight limit, and if you can afford it, a value pack which will give you more money from marketplace sales. Don't get me wrong, I'm not a fan of this game's cash shop, and I do think some aspects are a bit pay to win, or at least bordering on pay to win, but it's not as bad as other Asian MMOs, and you can get by in this game just fine with minimal investment. What class should I play? This is by far the most common question I get asked in my live stream, and it's always a pretty difficult one to answer. Due to BDO being quite a grindy MMO, the most important thing is you pick a class you enjoy playing or at least think is cool. The problem with doing this as a new player is you can't really judge how a class plays until level 56, due to the Awakening completely changing the gameplay of every class in this game. My advice would be to look at the class Awakening videos and decide what you think's the coolest. Also think about what role you want to fill in the game. Do you want to be super tanky? Do you want high mobility? Do you want to be more of a support? Do you want to be an assassin? Do you want to play what's currently OP, or maybe something that guilds are in desperate need of? These are all things to consider, but to find out more, I highly suggest you check out the video linked on screen by a YouTuber called Anders, which goes over every class talking about its pros and cons. Alternatively, drop by my stream on Twitch and I'll give you some advice. A common problem that almost every new player has with Black Desert is that it's very confusing to initially get into. It's quite a weird game that doesn't really follow the typical MMO formula, and when people start to see that you don't get combat XP from questing, there's a node and worker system, or the game doesn't have raids and dungeons, they start to freak out a bit. My advice would be to go into this game and expect to relearn how to play an MMO again. Throw out everything you think you know about MMOs and come into it with the mindset to learn. learn. Don't rush things, take it slow, and watch my ultimate beginner's guide as it goes through pretty much everything you'd want to know about the game. As a new player, BDO feels like a bit of a clusterfuck and will probably piss you off a lot at first. But if you stick with it and figure it all out, there's a good chance you'll get some enjoyment out of it. That being said, the game isn't for everyone. I consider it to be the Marmite of MMOs, as people seem to love it or completely hate it. Regardless, it's worth giving a good try so you know where you stand. Is Black Desert a PvP or PvE MMO? Personally, I consider Black Desert to be more of a PvP MMO for one simple reason. There's not many reasons to gear up outside of the PvP content. PvE content exists in the form of mob grinding, field bosses, gatekeepers, and life skills. However, none of that requires you to have a lot of gear, if any, to participate in, whereas PvP is the opposite due to it being gear-based. You basically do the PvE stuff so that you can become stronger in PvP. In the future, they are going to add some more endgame PvE things, but I highly doubt it'll change things too much. That being said, a recent straw poll showed that 70% of BDO players enjoy the game purely for PvE and life skills, so disregard everything I just said. But that's pretty much it for this video, guys. I hope some of you will find it useful. If you've got any more Black Desert related questions, drop by my live stream on Twitch TV, where I usually stream for 5 to 6 days per week. And if you enjoyed this video, feel free to hit that sub button for more MMO stuff in the future. But thanks for watching, I hope you all have a great day, and I'll see you again really soon.